It all starts with a girl waking up from a horrible nightmare. She saw that she pounced on food at night, and for that, her husband broke off the engagement. Lately, she often sees someone leaving her or going into the unknown. The girl is frightened and doesn't understand what it can mean. An assistant comes in unannounced and allows herself to comment on mistress's behavior last night. At the same time, she brought some water and a small towel. The only problem is that the lady has no idea who this girl is. She's seeing her for the first time in her life. Meanwhile, the assistant starts telling that yesterday Sophia was so shocked by something that she fell unconscious and ended up here. The girl wanted to answer something, but suddenly it was as if she lost the power of speech and does not understand what is happening to her. She could not say a single word or even make a sound. In addition to that, she somehow feels like she's seen or been to this place somewhere. Too many questions come up, with the assistant talking about some meeting in the principal's office. The girl happened to look in the mirror and got even more confused. She saw in the reflection a man who looked nothing like her at all. She looked completely different before. Now I can see why everything is strange here, and she doesn't understand anything. Is this another nightmare or something like that? Also, it's like she remembers the girl she saw in the reflection, but unfortunately, Sophia never realized where she could have seen her. It turns out Sophia was trapped in the body of one of the characters from the Restaurant of Hearts, or otherwise, the Love Cafe. This world, it's one of games with elements of cooking, running a restaurant business, and most importantly, being able to interact with some characters. There are a lot of them here, so she'll have plenty of opportunity to meet each one of them. Fiora Lupin, one of the characters in this story, the protagonist by chance, starts working in a restaurant at the Royal Academy of Marseille. And here's the villain, the Duke's daughter, who's always getting in the way of cooking and building relationships with the main characters. And it seems that Sophia has become just that, a villain who makes life difficult for everyone around her. And this girl, whom she initially perceived as a helper, is just that, Fiora Lupin. Of course, she didn't really like the role because, at the very least, it's very interesting why she got to be the villain and not the main character. Maybe it's because they have a good physique, but that's just her guess, which doesn't really matter anymore. In her opinion, if she were the main character, there wouldn't be much of a problem, especially with the male characters. For starters, she wanted to look around the area to see where she would have to live from this day forward. Everywhere is very beautiful. You can see that the area is meticulously cared for, growing lots of vegetables and, of course, beautiful plants. These buildings that literally reach up to the sky really do look a lot like the one she saw in one of her favorite games. Actually, so far, it's not that bad. We can only hope that she'll be treated well and can feel comfortable in this body. Because not every day is given a chance to live a new life, even in her favorite game. Even though she found herself in the body of a villain, the girl intends to enjoy this life and live it in a way that could not in the past. She's sure it'll be a lot of fun here. She'll make a lot of friends, and overall, this life will be much better, more colorful and interesting than in the world where she was before. In the meantime, she had come to the academy, or rather to the headmaster's office. The girl had not even had time to greet him before she found out that she had been expelled. Marseille Academy principal, Philippe, is very unhappy with the way she is being trained and treats this opportunity. He reads that she is taking someone else's place, and there are more interested students than her. First of all, judging by the fact that he called her Julia, that's the name of the villain whose body she's in. And second of all, isn't she going to be able to enjoy even one day of high school life? After that, they went into his office and it started. The man started asking her if she had an excuse why she had eaten all the food from the academic canteen last night. He gave her time to explain herself and asked her not to cheat. Julia looks at him and doesn't understand why she has to make excuses for actions she had nothing to do with, because at the time, it wasn't her doing it. It was the real villain. When suddenly, she remembers a dream she had in which some girl was eating food too. It's either a coincidence or not a dream. She distinctly remembers a man who really looks like the villain from that game, with an evil stare and food in his hands. Was it really a warning that she had gotten into this girl's body and would have to explain that situation? The man looks and realizes that she simply has nothing to say, He calmly tries not to raise his voice and still wait for the moment when she says something. At this moment, she has two options. At the same time, the girl remembers that no matter how hard she tries, she will not be able to utter a single word. The question arises how she will live in this world and, for example, now, something to answer. As suddenly she has a window that only she can see. It has two buttons on it. What to respond to this person? The first phrase, I don't remember much about the events of last night. The second button, this is baseless slander. The game will adjust depending on what she chooses to do. This selection window is very similar to the one in the game, and it actually looks very interesting. It means that she will only be able to speak when she chooses a dialogue response. As soon as she chose the first option, she was able to say the following. I don't remember much about the events of last night. The man asked how this could be, since it was not a month ago, but only last night. Then he was forced to say that she had been seen by several eyewitnesses, as well as by Mr. Leonard himself, who had honored her with his presence, so there was no way she could justify her act. It turns out that this is the same guy that the girl saw in her dream before she knew she was in this game. The same guy who broke off the engagement and told the principal about everything. He's one of the characters that are meant to be in a relationship in this game. But unfortunately, it didn't work out with him for the girl. Because he had suffered terrible poisoning in his younger years, he had an aversion to most foods. A target whose liking index cannot be raised by cooking because he or she does not have a favorite dish. And yet, he has the maximum level of attention from other female characters. Their interest in him is always at the same maximum level. Meanwhile, the guy says that, like he said yesterday, he's calling off the engagement and it's off the table. At that moment, the girl thought about the fact that he is such a complicated character that if she were a real villain, she would have left him in the middle of the game. She thinks that he doesn't deserve her attention, and maybe it's better that the breakup happened now. Probably because he hates food so much and tries to avoid it all the time. Seeing his lover late at night with a huge piece of food in her hands made him so disgusted that he wanted to break up. Although if that was the case, it's very strange. In fact, this separation is an event that cannot be changed. And in fact, the girl is not very upset, but the fact that she is expelled from the academy, that's the real problem, according to the principal. It was already difficult for them because she criticizes the food all the time, so they always had the thought of saying goodbye to her. So, after this situation, he has one more reason to do it after all, and no doubt he is tired that after criticism from the villain, the cooks are fired one by one. At this point, the girl discovers that the villain suffered not only the main characters, but even the cooks, whom she has never seen once. The man once again reiterates that because of her actions, the Academy's restaurant will have to close its doors for a while. They would not want to resort to such a harsh punishment, but it is not easy for them right now. In the end, thanks to his good character, the director offers a compromise to rebuild the restaurant. And if after 6 months he is back on the job, so be it. She can stay and continue her studies. As a teacher, he gives her the right to correct her mistake, but no one knows by what miracle she will do it. And yet to punish the miscreant for this behavior is not enough. He said she would be suspended for those 6 months. The restaurant reinstatement, the suspensions, the principal's conditions, it all reminds her of a so-called love cafe. She remembers very well the moment when she came home after school one day, went on her phone and saw that a new mode had been released in the game. It was a new difficulty level, rebuilding the restaurant after the villain's antics. If it's really like in the game, it means that the girl got into the most difficult level, which no one can pass. Very interesting. What will happen next and whether she will be able to cope with this impossible task at all. In the game's most difficult level, the Restaurant of the Heart, the story goes to the second year, where the villainess interferes with the protagonist. In normal mode, the main character is given a choice of several love interests, depending on the choice of his target, and his liking index will depend on the ending. There is also a game at the counter, where the main task is to make the unpopular restaurant of the Academy popular. This is the level where many stay. The game at the counter, you need to prepare recipes correctly and increase the sympathy of the customer. Here, the specialty is that you need to rather manage the restaurant. At the same time, you cannot be distracted by romantic moments. The girl has no idea how she's going to remember all this, because if she'd known before, she'd have been prepared. Meanwhile, the man reminds her that he already has a lot on his plate, so it would be nice if she understood the decision right away and said which option she liked better, dropping out or fixing her mistakes. He realizes that it's very difficult and perhaps cruel of him, but still, with her temper sooner or later, it would still have to be fought, and it's better if it happens now. He was making her more and more doubtful that there was something obviously better among these options. The girl looking at him with eyes as if she had been given the task of reading his thoughts. Although it was probably a lot easier than rebuilding a restaurant that wasn't in demand, Julia realized that things weren't as easy here as they had originally seemed. She's been in the wrong role from the start, and now these punishments, it's like she's trying to make her life harder. Meanwhile, the answer choice box pops up. First option, I'm ready to drop out. Second option, I'll reinstate the restaurant and agree to the conditions. If she chooses expulsion, then the game will automatically end, respectively, and her life. But for Nutrition knows what will happen after the end of the game, whether she will return to his world or just die, and that's the end of it. I guess the only right choice is to say I'll rebuild the restaurant and agree to the terms. Love Cafe. In this game, the girl watched beautiful characters eating delicious food and just enjoyed what she saw, but she never thought that she would be inside all that was going on and face all these problems. At one point, Julia remembers her past life, which was a lot of problems. It all started after the death of her mother. She and her father were left alone, and after that moment, her father did not even spend the night at home. He only came when he needed money. There were times when he took the money I needed to pay the rent on the house. And when she tried to stop him and told him there was no more money, he started yelling and said that if there wasn't enough money, she should drop out of school, go to work and make money so that everyone would have enough money. He always thought and said more than once that his daughter was the reason his wife died. He left her picture on purpose. He was sad all day long, and only because this house is full of memories with this person. He tried to show up as rarely as possible and spent the night at friends' houses. The man has changed a lot lately, and when he came home, it was the worst moments in his daughter's life. She was very afraid of it, and sometimes she even locked the door on purpose. In the end, her only joy in life was a game called Heart Restaurant, watching the happy characters so she could keep her mind off the bad stuff and take her mind off the horrible reality for a little while. Since she has had an interest in cooking since she was a child, this game was perfect because you could cook food there and get ratings from your favorite characters. She was even sometimes asked to make something again, especially her desserts, which is what she does best. The girl didn't notice or think about it, but in fact, from these characters, she always heard what she so desperately wanted to hear in reality, so she couldn't put the phone away and return to her real world. This game had absolutely everything she loved: the cooking, the praise, the smiling characters, everything very nice, no aggression and all the bad stuff. The thing is that the girl's mom was a professional pastry chef. She was a very good cook, and maybe that's why her daughter loved everything about food so much. In the meantime, she decided to rebuild the restaurant and do her best to stay in this world as long as possible and not return to the old one. She's sure she'll be happy here, no matter what, and no one can stop her. In any case, she has no reason to stop, for in reality, she's in for a real hell of a ride, which is enough already. In fact, the director had expected a completely different answer. He was sure that the villainess would refuse and not even think of doing such a noble thing, admitting her guilt and agreeing to help out. And Leonard apparently wasn't very happy with her answer. He thought she'd checked out and they'd never see each other again, but it didn't happen the way he thought it would. No matter how hard it is for her right now, she has to do even the impossible. Even if no one believes in her, will want to get rid of her, or will only make it harder for her to exist in this game. At one point, she suddenly sees the sympathy index from Leonard's side. It shows -10 points, though that's not surprising. It means that he doesn't like her very much now, and even causes a little aggression. The girl tries not to pay attention to it, though she still wonders how he can change his attitude to her so abruptly, even though it's a game. The man realizes that this choice was very easy for her, and yet Despite the cruelty of the situation, he wants to support her very much. He realizes that this is a very difficult task, and not every adult can handle it. And since she is a student, he has made it clear that she can count on his help. Meanwhile, Julia went back to her room. She can't believe that everything that happened today is not a dream. She has never felt so tired. So much happened today that didn't happen even in a week in her previous life. And that's not all. During the conversation with the director before saying goodbye, she took the opportunity to ask for a new room. For her, the main thing was not beauty, but space and tranquility. Tomorrow begins her first day of work, on which the rest of her life may depend. She wonders how possible it all is, for it seems far from it. If she manages to increase the popularity of her restaurant in some miraculous way, her love interest can also get better with dishes from her restaurant. As suddenly, she again pops up a window with information. The game offers a briefing on the conditions of passing this mode. To return to the academy, she must fulfill the conditions of the director, cook the hero's delicious food. The higher her characters have the index of attachment, the restaurant. If for 6 months she managed to resume the restaurant, you can return to the academy. This little briefing was just in case she hadn't memorized what her mission was for the near future. Then, another window appeared. You need to remember that to increase the index of sympathy in this level will be more difficult than usual. If the villain serves food that does not like the character, there is a high risk that the game will automatically end. You need to be as careful as possible. Julia had received so much information that she couldn't remember a single point. She only realized one thing: it was going to be very difficult. Now the first task is available to her. You have to offer your dish to one of the love interests. As for the reward, if the food is liked, increase in the liking index. If the food is not liked, decrease in the liking index in rare cases. To get a better understanding of the characters, she decided to look up a little information about each of them and started with Leonardo. He is a third-year student at Marcel Academy. And also, he is the crown prince of the kingdom of Jurdo. Favorite food: there is no such thing. Disliked food: all foods with intense flavor, sour food, difficulty level, high. Leonard has never been her favorite, nor does he like her, so this character is skipped right away. The main difficulty would be that he is impossible to please in food. The next character, Albert, he also a popular character, is a little less complex than the previous one. He is also a third-year student at Marcel Academy and very free-spirited. He is a smiling young man who rarely fights with anyone. Favorite food: meat, disliked food, vegetables and bitter foods, difficulty level low. She really liked this character. He would be easy to please and seems like a perfect fit, as if there could be no one better than him. The girl already imagines how easy it will be to please him, to get a good grade, as opposed to how it would be with Leonardo, who is constantly dissatisfied with something. The next character, Roger, is a guy the girl doesn't remember much about, and now she's not so afraid that he'll turn out to be like the first one because she's already found a good candidate, Albert. And yet Roger is a sophomore at Marcel Academy, a young man raised to be strict, and even if he doesn't like something, more often than not he will just keep quiet rather than complain and give a bad grade. Favorite food: fruits and mushrooms, disliked food, seafood, difficulty level medium. At a glance, it might seem like he's a very nice guy who's never in a bad mood. He is actually not at all what he seems. And when an unfair situation comes up, he turns off the mercy and becomes a fighter for justice. He always gets what he wants and is able to stand up for himself. Also, if you increase the sympathy index too much, he will become obsessed with the heroine, and it will be hard for her to communicate with anyone but him, because he will forbid and control it. The character is ambiguous, so turn next. This guy's name is Charles, very interested in who he is and what his specialty is. School doctor of the Academy Marcel, the second son of the Duke, who enjoys a leisurely life. He does not like to rush and prefers to enjoy every moment, even if there are plenty of problems around him. Favorite food: seafood and spicy. Dislike food: there is no such thing. Level of difficulty is hard. This guy is known for the fact that there is no girl who wouldn't want to be together with him, and from the looks of it, Julia is no exception. Not a day goes by that he doesn't compliment someone or ask them out on a date. No wonder all the girls like him a lot and he has no enemies. He even has an energy so pleasant that you want to talk to this person all day long. His balloon falls in love with passers-by, literally at first sight, and he knows it. Though she knows everyone's food preference, there's one problem. It's possible something might have changed, and also, in this level, everyone hates the villain, and bringing the index up is going to be even harder than it could be. Things are very bad. There are problems all around, and there is no telling what might happen. Even if the food is delicious, it is possible that something will still go wrong. She tries to go through every possible memory in her head, but in the end, she remembers one Leonardo and has no idea what she's going to do about it. The biggest problem is that it is necessary to somehow get all these characters, or at least one of them, to come to her restaurant, and she is afraid to even approach them. If she were in their place, she would not miss the day when the Academy's restaurant served her favorite dish. All she has to do is cook their favorite dishes and attract customers to the restaurant, and even if they don't know the villain in any way, it's the food that might be of interest to them. It's a very tricky situation, but Julia will use every possible way. Everything seems both easy and just impossible at the same time. First of all, you need to at least come to the place and assess the situation, which the girl did. Fortunately, she remembers the way and is not busy at all. She thought it would be very dirty and uncomfortable, but it was quite decent. There were even some decorations left. Apparently, they hadn't had time to move all the furniture out of here yet. The place where all the main events took place in the game, the restaurant where everyone has been, it's very tasty here. We just need to make it even better. It sounds very easy, but time will tell. She'll not only have to cook delicious food, but she'll have to make someone want to come here in the first place. She's very lucky that all the kitchen utensils are in perfect condition. She will not have to clean and buy new ones. Everything is sparkling and waiting for new culinary masterpieces. Suddenly, Julia noticed that there was no food at all. There was an apple on the shelf, and that was all she could find. Apparently, there had been no visitors for a long time, but she would fix that soon, I guess. The thing is that after that situation, many suppliers refused to cooperate with the restaurant. So in order to get food, you have to try very hard to hide the fact that it is needed here. The girl, without hesitation, immediately went in search of ingredients, because this is the main thing without which nothing will work. So far, everything is more or less going according to plan. What is good about this restaurant is its small vegetable garden where you can find some ingredients. There are always vegetables here, and the best and highest quality ones at that. It is a pleasure to harvest here. All vegetables are very ripe, beautiful, and most importantly, incredibly tasty. There's so much to see and do. You want to take it all, but Julia forgot her basket, so she'll have to come back several times. She hasn't seen such fresh vegetables for a long time. Everything here is much better than in regular stores. The products are different even in appearance, not to mention how tasty they must be. In the meantime, you have to make a menu based on the available ingredients. The girl has taken on the job, and so far, she is even in the mood to do something. She is inspired and really wants to get the desired result. She was able to get tomatoes, a chicken thigh, some spices, and more for the main characters to appreciate. At least she really hopes so. There's also an onion, an eggplant, and some garlic that should make something like a restaurant dish. First, she sliced the available produce and fried it in a pan with oil and garlic. Then I added tomatoes, oregano, and broth, left it all to simmer on low heat, and started the next step. After about half an hour had passed, she added spices to taste, and just a few minutes later, the dish was ready. Julia called this masterpiece chicken and tomato sauce. From the looks very appetizing. The main thing is to taste the same, not bad. She took a small spoon and tasted some of the broth. It was actually better than she had expected. She could use the experience in the kitchen. It was good to be able to cook what she was used to in her previous life in the game. We can only hope that someone will appreciate her efforts and the girl will get at least 1 point today. She tried very hard, so it will be a shame if no one comes. Now we need to raise the popularity of the restaurant among the students of the academy, and after that, the love interests will pick up on their own. Julia walked outside with a sign that said the restaurant was back in operation. Despite being seen by a lot of people, nothing worked because she can't speak, so she just stands in one place and waits for who knows what. They all just look at her as if the girl had done something wrong and was the enemy of all of them, which of course she was. But still, you could have asked what kind of dish they were serving at the restaurant today. Everyone knows that this restaurant is adored by everyone. It's strange that no one ever comes in. It's like the students are ignoring this news on purpose. Some thought it wouldn't hurt to think about who they were partnering with before reopening the restaurant. They don't like the villain standing at the entrance. It really puts some people off. At some point, a popular character with blue hair came up. The girl doesn't remember his name, but she's sure that at least he won't pass by and it will work as a small advertisement. This is the one, Roger, which is dangerous at high sympathy index, but one of the easiest targets. Very interesting what will happen next and how he will affect her mission, will help, or on the contrary, only harm her. The girl is sure that if he tries the meat and tomato sauce, he will definitely like it. The main thing is to lure him to the restaurant and get an estimate. At one point, Julia forgot she couldn't talk. She walked up to him and even startled him. The guy didn't realize what she was doing and ended up in a very awkward situation. In the end, everything is ruined. The only person I had hoped for just ran away and will probably never come back. It was even worse than she thought. It would have been better if he'd just walked past. But as it was, absolutely everyone around her noticed it. She really wanted to turn back the clock. If she had the opportunity, she'd love to do it. But unfortunately, she doesn't. Meanwhile, the girl starts to hear the conversations of the people around her. They can't stop laughing at the fact that no one will come to this restaurant. They read that there is nothing delicious there, especially if the food was cooked by her, the villain that everyone hates. After all these failed attempts, ridicule, and awkward situations, she thought she could close up for the day. No one would come anyway. It was quite hot today, so she decided to make honey lemon lemonade and go to her room so she wouldn't see anyone else. In the end, the restaurant did have to close. Nothing good happened. It was only laughed at and made you think that perhaps this mission impossible. Maybe if it wasn't for the bad reputation of the villain, things would be completely different. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it, and we have to accept that there's no easy way out. On her way home, she accidentally saw a guy near a tree. The girl stopped and realized that his face was too familiar. When she got closer, it turned out to be Leonardo. He's very sad for some reason and seems to even be crying. She's never seen him like this before and doesn't understand what could have happened to make this character suddenly sad. At first, she wanted to help, to calm him down and be there for him. But at some point, she remembered the situation in the principal's office and immediately changed her mind. In any case, she would never conquer this impregnable fortress. Even if Julia approached, he would probably get very angry and ask her to leave. So in order not to spoil anyone's mood even more, she just passed by as if she didn't notice him. After walking a few more meters, she couldn't help herself and went over to him. It was very hard for her to look at someone who was sad because she had been in all sorts of situations herself and knew how hard it was. Even though she doesn't know the situation, maybe this will make him feel at least a little better. No matter how angry he is, it will probably make him feel really good to know that someone cares about him. But I don't understand why his face is so pale. It's like he hasn't eaten in days and he's been in the hot sun the whole time. As suddenly, a window appears with the option to speak. There are two phrases to choose from. The first is to say anything. The second is to remain silent and just watch from the sidelines. Julia chooses the first option and asks if everything is okay. She beautifully sees that everything is bad, but still wants to hear what really happened and why he is here. At that moment, he raised his head, looked in her direction for just a second, and gave her a look like he was about to say something horrible. The girl starts to get really worried and doesn't even know how to react to it, literally. After a few seconds, he looked at her and said in a calm voice that everything is fine. The guy thanked for the concern and asked not to worry. It's very strange because the girl can see very well and realize that he has some problems. The only thing left to figure out is why he's hiding it and won't say anything. Either way, she's not going anywhere until she takes him home and feeds him. Despite what he's done to her recently, she wants to take care of him because if she doesn't, no one else will. After that, she was again given the choice of silently walking away or calling someone for help. At the same second, The girl remembers that she has lemonade, and why not offer it to the guy? As soon as she thought of giving this bottle to him, she felt the country's energy and realized that something would prevent her from doing so. Julia doesn't understand anything, and in fact, becomes very afraid, because what can be expected from this game is unclear. There were some strange sounds. Her body seemed to freeze in one place. Literally everything was stopping her from helping Leonardo, no matter how much she wanted to. Then, some chains appear. They make a horrible, unpleasant sound and finally make it clear that this lemonade should not be in the hands of another player. Julia couldn't move her arms anymore. She regretted even coming up and noticing him near the tree. It would have been better to just walk by and ignore him. It turns out it's a lot simpler, and it's a bit different than she realized. If she ignores the selection window and decides to do something without pressing a button, the game just doesn't give that option. It forbids her from even moving. The girl sees that he is getting worse and worse. It becomes very difficult to make a decision because in such a situation, every second counts. At some point, she gets angry at the whole system because she's sick of this window of choice. She can't do anything without it. She can't even move. She starts to look at it with a hateful look, like she wants to hit it or give up everything. In the end, Julia decides that if things are so unfair here, she won't settle for it, and with those options, it's better to choose nothing at all. She wanted to hit that window, but this time the chains beat her to it too. They wouldn't let her do it and clamped her down hard enough that she couldn't touch the screen. Meanwhile, the guy is watching her and doesn't understand what made her so angry, because he just didn't touch anyone, and she already hates this game. And also, he heard some weird sound, and then that there was some kind of system crash. The thing is, he just can't see this window that Julia was able to break after all. She was very frightened, but so far nothing terrible was happening. The chains were starting to release her, and the best part was that she was able to talk. She took the opportunity to come closer to him and offered to drink this lemonade because it would make him feel much better. In this hot weather, it was just what he needed. Before drinking the lemonade, he needed to ask what was in the lemonade. The girl first thought of saying the wrong thing, but realized that it was wrong if she did. It is possible that the game will come up with a punishment for her, so it is better not to do that. She told me that it's very simple. It's lemon water and honey, which she made with her own hands, so it must be very tasty. When suddenly she remembers that there is a small problem. Because of the poisoning he suffered as a child, he almost never eats what strangers have prepared for him, a rule he has followed for years. Julia was upset, for he would probably refuse to take the bottle in his hands, let alone taste it. Leonardo looked at her as if he did not understand why she was still holding it in her hands and would not let him drink it. The guy couldn't help himself and asked a question, to which the girl replied that he was wary of anything other people gave him, so she thought he wouldn't drink the drink. Afterward, so that he would not hesitate and drink it after all, she suggested that she should do it herself first and then give it to him. She thought that a very good idea. As suddenly, Leonardo didn't wait for anything, only for the reason that he really felt very bad now. He took this bottle without a second thought and thanked for his concern. Julia couldn't believe her words. She was sure he couldn't be forced to do it under any circumstances, and now he took the bottle himself and even thanked her for it. Because of the terrible heat, he doesn't care whether the lemonade tastes good or not. The main thing is to quench his thirst and finally have something to drink. He's been waiting for this moment for a long time, and it seems that there may be nothing left of the lemonade. He'll drink it down to the last drop. After that, a very awkward moment began. Leonardo started talking about the lemon she had added to this lemonade. The girl only now remembered that he hated sour things, so now there could be a very negative and aggressive reaction on his part. If now he does not like something, you can consider that the game ends once and for all. Julia herself already has water droplets on his face. He has a feeling that this is the end because she has made a terrible mistake, treated the character with something he hates. She has no doubt that he will be, to put it mildly, not delighted with this drink. But why is he silent? Did a miracle happen and he liked the sour lemonade? The girl relaxed for a second as suddenly he started to rise, which meant that now, in all likelihood, she was going to regret very much that she had even approached him at that moment at all. Leonardo starts to leave very quickly and unexpectedly, as if offended. Julia starts to catch up with him, although she realizes that it is better to stay where she is and not add fuel to the fire. Instead of changing the subject, she starts talking to him again about food, as if she were deliberately trying to make him angry. She asks what he had for breakfast today, for she is afraid she may faint on the way out. She starts to worry again because she doesn't understand what to do at all. Now she has to do the restaurant, and she's wasting her time on the character. But on the other hand, he needs help much more right now. The girl continues to insist that he should go to the medical office because they will definitely be able to help him and maybe even give him some medicine. On the way, Julia notices Roger and of course runs up, scared the guy again. He even thought of turning around, but still decided to listen in case something happened. She starts apologizing to Worry and explains that she needs his help and it's urgent. The thing is that since she has to hurry to the restaurant and do her business, she asked Roger to take Leonardo to the medical room. She told him what happened and apologized again for the inconvenience. Why did she go to him? There were plenty of other people around, doing nothing, and he was just getting ready for class. She could clearly see by him that he didn't really want to help, even if it was very important. But since there were no other options, she figured he was obligated to do what she asked him to do anyway. The girl literally attacked him and repeated that he was the only one who could help. The guy got even more scared and thought about complaining to someone about her, because it's not normal. He can't even walk calmly around the academy grounds anymore. Eventually, by some miracle, he agrees and lets her go about her business, of which there are indeed many. Roger approached the guy with a very unhappy look on his face, but he did it. Julia still doesn't understand how that's possible because he could have just walked by without answering anything. She looks at them from the sidelines and realizes that even after the doctor's visit, Leonardo will have to eat something. And of course, she will take care of it. We can assume that since he agreed to drink her lemonade, he probably won't refuse food. The main thing this time is to take into account all his preferences and remember what he hates. Luckily, there are enough ingredients. The girl took a chicken thigh, lettuce leaves, tomatoes, bread, and butter. First rubbed the chicken thigh with salt and pepper, then fried it in a skillet. After that, buttered the bread and started layering the sliced ingredients on top of each other, resulting in quite an appetizing chicken sandwich. There was nothing complicated about it. The main thing is that the character liked everything. The girl left all his rules in food and sure that everything will be so delicious that he will ask for more. Most likely a few pieces will be enough. Leonardo never eats large portions. He just needs literally a little bit of food, and he'll be full for the day. Julia went out into the corridor and started looking for him. He happened to be walking nearby. She started to catch up with him and asked him to stop. Very interesting how he will react. The girl is waiting for the glory of gratitude, or at least that he will eat one bite, however small. The fact that he will trust her and not refuse will mean victory. She managed to catch up with him. The guy noticed her and didn't even pass her by. He turned around, and when he saw some box in her hands, he got curious and wondered what could be in it. Julia asked him how he was feeling, but for some reason he didn't say anything in reply, as usual, but just looked at her with a pensive look, as if he had a lot of problems. After that, he did tell me that he had rested in a medical office and felt much better, and was given some medication to take once a day for a week. Julia was very happy to hear that, so she wanted to make him happy with some good food too. So she asked him to take this box and see what was inside, also hinting that there was something he needed right now. Seeing that he was afraid to take this shorthand, the girl opened it herself and showed him that there was nothing wrong with it. She told him that it was the most ordinary chicken sandwiches with vegetables, which should please him. She tried to cook without special seasonings and sauces, everything according to his preferences. Now she's sure that no matter how hard he tries to refuse, eventually he won't be able to hold back and try a bite after all, when suddenly the guy turns away without even touching the box. He apologized and reminded me that everyone knows he doesn't eat food that strangers have prepared for him. Exceptions can only be when he has personally seen what is added during the cooking process. In other cases, he never agrees and asks to remember it forever. But will all his efforts be in vain? and he will go hungry for the rest of the day without eating anything. For sure, he wants to eat, but only because of some rules. He has to refuse. Julia apologized and said she shouldn't have bothered so much and wasted her time on it. Because if he was fine with it, why not just split up and start doing her own thing? At this moment, Leonardo saw that she was very upset and decided to at least remedy the situation a little. He remembered the lemonade and said something it was really very nice. She had helped him out a lot, because if it hadn't been for that drink, he would have lain near the tree for the rest of the day. Of course, that's much better than complete silence, but still, it would be nice to talk him into these sandwiches because they are really delicious and there's nothing scent in them. She looks at him and gives him a look that lets him know that if he leaves now, she's going to be very upset and think these sandwiches are completely unappetizing. All he could say, the guy's already said he's so scared of getting poisoned one more time that he's actually willing to go hungry just to avoid the risk. Of course, Julia tried to smile, but looking at her, you could see very well how hurt and unpleasant she was that another person was refusing her food. At this point, she was thinking of leaving and doing nothing today, when suddenly the heart appears above him again, with the same indicator she saw last time. After a few seconds, it changed from blue to pink, and now it was not -10 but 0. Blue meant friendship and pink meant love. Julia is completely confused. She doesn't understand what it means and whether it's even possible to get any sympathy and positive points from him at all. Now, most of all, she is confused by the fact that the blue color of friendship has changed to the pink color of love. It's all very, very strange. The girl understands less and less how this game works. You'd think there should be some conflict by now, but the lady was not confused and tried to make sure she didn't ruin things with him. She apologized and said she wouldn't cook anything for him again. To make everyone feel better, and he didn't think that she was planning to poison him, the girl explained that she was rarely thanked for anything, so she was confused and didn't know how to behave. At one point, she suddenly wanted to tell him the way other people treated her and why she was so happy when he thanked her for the lemonade. The thing was that usually people discussed her bad temper and said she would never learn to cook. Because of this, the real villain ate sweets very often and couldn't stop. So they started laughing at her and said that it was no wonder that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't earn any positive points. The real villain hated herself. She constantly tried to lose weight, but because of the stress and ridicule from others, there was the opposite result. When she learned of her engagement to Prince Leonardo, she gave up sweets and tried to eat right. As a result, she was constantly eating something at night, just like the time he had seen it in person. The girl was only gaining weight, and all her efforts were in vain. She looked at herself in the mirror and dreamed of seeing a slim girl who had no self-esteem issues, who was envied and admired by other girls. Her pride as the Duke's daughter had been trampled to the ground. No matter how hard she tried, the villain could accomplish nothing, and all that pain and regret were preserved forever in the case. It seems that even if she becomes perfect, she'll still be dissatisfied inside and see the same old villain in her reflection. She began to remember it all in detail, and at some point she didn't notice that she had stopped noticing Leonardo. She was speaking all her thoughts aloud, so he heard everything. She immediately felt very embarrassed. The girl never thought he would find out about this, especially from her. It was strange that he still didn't try to support her and pretended as if he was about to go somewhere else. Julia couldn't hold back anymore, and even though he didn't care, she continued to tell her story, namely how she was tired of being criticized all the time and not believing that she could change. The most offensive thing that hurt the villain during all this time, some of the girls who found out that Leonardo left her after she started eating what it is at night, thought that they will never go to this restaurant again because they do not want the same. All of a sudden began to watch the diet and began to deny themselves sweets so that in no case did not add a single extra kilo. Even the girl who never cared about her appearance finding herself in this game was surprised by such a direct insult. She has no idea how the real villainess even dealt with it and continued to appear on the street. When suddenly, the best part of the story began. Leonardo decided to help her after all and explained that it was a bit different from what she had realized and how the other girls had perceived it. He could never think that the villain seriously thought that he had broken off the engagement only because of her looks, and hearing these words, Julia began to listen to him very carefully. For could it be that the cause was really something else, and she blamed herself for nothing and hated herself so much? She thought she was going to hear something nice and calm down, but it only got worse. The guy said that given her behavior so far, the incident in the canteen and more, he realized that someone like her could not be the future queen of this country. Appearance has never been any factor in his final decision. He judges people by their words and actions. He never advises to listen to those who judge people only by their appearance. That's not what matters to him. When he saw what she did in the dining room and heard that there was nothing wrong with it for her, he immediately made a final decision. Lastly, he only wants to give a little advice, which is that she should not pay attention to what others say about her, take better care of herself, and not think that appearance is as important as she thought it was. After that, he just left and wished her a good day. Supposedly now they have nothing to talk about. Julia doesn't know whether to be happy about it or not. On the one hand, she learned that the problem was not in appearance, but on the other hand, she will never be able to return this relationship. The only good thing is that they did not remain enemies and maybe even communicate normally. In fact, the girl is very happy that they are now just acquaintances who have learned the answers to the questions that bothered them so much all along. Julia thought to herself, if the real villain heard those words, it would be nice. She would stop hating herself and be able to enjoy life in peace. Suddenly, when she was just looking at Leonardo, some guy came up to her and scared her so badly that Julia almost fainted. She didn't expect anyone to be there at all. It just so happened that this man came up right after Leonardo was out of sight. It turns out he just wanted to ask her if she'd seen him. He was sorry for the situation. He didn't mean to scare her at all. The girl looked at him and pretended it was all right. Also, this is the one, Albert, that you better not fight with. He's one of the main characters you need to earn positive points from. Even though he is the easiest character, which is suitable even for beginners, he still needs a special approach. Besides, Julia still does not have a single positive score. For as long as she could remember, Albert had been a friend and classmate of Leonardo's since childhood, so she didn't keep this information from him and told him that he had just left and was heading that way. She hadn't expected to see him so soon, and it was probably even better. She wouldn't have to make the effort to go up and ask if he had time or a desire to meet her. It might be easier to make friends with him than with Roger, for example, but it's not for sure yet. At one point, she was about to say goodbye and tell him she had a lot to do, when suddenly he started to come closer, which was a little surprising and even alarming. The guy starts sniffing something, and at that moment, the girl didn't think at all that maybe he liked the smell of the sandwiches she was holding in her hands. Right after that, he pretended that nothing happened. Apparently, Albert doesn't plan to say goodbye and has something to say. It turned out that the thing was that before, when he was near her or just passing by, he constantly disliked some suspicious smell, but today the smell seemed to change and became much better. The girl did not understand what it meant and felt too awkward. Julia is trying her best to make sure he doesn't guess anything, though apparently he's only determined by smell that he's not the real villain in front of him. Luckily, the guy hasn't realized it means exactly that yet. He just smelled a different scent and said so without any suspicion. Afterward, he just said it was none of his business and thought that it was probably just a show, since they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The girl immediately relaxed and decided that to avoid meeting anyone else, she'd better get back to her room or get busy. Just a second later, she was on her way to her room when she heard someone's voice again, and she was startled. She thought he was looking for Leonardo too, and immediately showed him which way he went so as not to waste anyone's time. It turned out he had just come to tell her that Dr. Charles had asked her to call her into his office. Is the one, Charles, who is a challenging character but at the same time has incredible charm. So it's probably best not to ignore his request, because if she doesn't show up, it will only get worse, and she'll definitely never earn any points.